Hey everybody! Today we are going to learn about Adobe Creative Cloud Premiere Pro 2015. And basically this lesson will go over the interface basics and starting a project and making sure that your file organization is underway. So let's get started. For this project I have a demo folder that I've created, and inside that demo folder I have some B-roll copyright royalty-free footage I have downloaded off of the internet. And this is completely copyright free. I made sure it was stock footage, and unlike our course, this is okay for practice that we can use stock footage. For our course, we're going to be obviously filming all original content. So I have 3 files in there and I put it in its own folder, and we're going to get started here by setting up this project folder to work with Premiere. So in my Spotlight, I'm going to look for Premiere, and it should be one of the first things to pop up. Adobe Premiere Pro CC Creative Cloud 2015. So we're going to go ahead and click on that and load it up. And this guy is doing the Michael Jackson on top of a giant mountain. It's a little strange, but we'll go with it. And the first window that we get kind of is a typical Adobe window, but you can see we have a Create button. We have the new features, which will kind of give you really great library tutorials. So if you get lost at any time, please take the extra time to go through these and watch them. Tips and techniques as well. If you ever have any trouble with anything in class, this would be one of the first resources I would go to get you started. But we're going to start on the Create tab. We can also go to File, New Project. We're going to start with a new project, and we're going to name this Nature Video. And we're going to set our location, because currently our location is in my documents. We're going to set it to go to our desktop here, and I'm going to select the demo project folder. And by doing that, what this does is this sets all of our settings to go to that folder and save to that folder. Now that's very important when we start working, to make sure that it's on a specific folder and working well. If you're using a hard drive, you may want to also make sure it's set up to that hard drive as well, so you can work off of hard drive. I do suggest working locally on your desktop just to be safe and make sure everything works. So let's look at a few of these settings. Let's start from the bottom. Capture is a capture format. We have, if we were importing from a video camera or whatnot. For most of us, we will be using digital cameras, so digital video will be the way to go. Audio, again, we use audio samples. We typically don't use milliseconds. And then video, I highly doubt you guys are going to have actual film footage, like feet of film, of 16mm film or 35mm film. So time code's really a good way to go. Now, video rendering and playback gives us a few options. Now, this is all dependent on your computer. If you have a very slow computer, I highly suggest using the software engine only. It will make things a little bit easier to kind of manage and to stomach as you go forward. Those of you who have a CUDA driver, which is through NVIDIA, if you can use your graphics card, or you could use the OpenCL. I'm going to keep mine set to default. The next tab is Scratch Disks. Now, Scratch Disks are essentially folders in which allow Premiere to preview your files so fast. So all the previews we play have to be cached or stored somewhere. So kind of think of these as if you would think of the cache on a browser for the web. When you clear your cache or clear your history, there'll be kind of imaginary folders. And you can see I have quite a bit of room on my disk to kind of play around with. So you want to make sure your hard drive has a few gigs to work with. All right, I set my project window. Everything looks great there. And I'm going to hit OK. And when I boot up Premiere, I get a variety of screens. So at first glance, not a lot is really noticeable. You understand probably certain things like the timeline, where it says drop your media here. And then this window, which is the project window, which is import media to start. We're going to talk about these 2 windows up at the top in a few minutes, but let's start by kind of looking at the interface. I can click, just like most Adobe programs, in between any of my windows, and I can stretch or compress those windows. So I have a lot of room for customization. these windows as well, and I don't suggest doing this until you become kind of intermediate at this program, can be dragged on top of each other, can be placed. You can see here I just put it into that sequence, and they can kind of be moved around in a very specific order. And that becomes really helpful when we get to the point of customizing our own editing skill, because you may be sitting here for a few hours working on clips, and the biggest and most important thing may be your workspace. At any point, if you see a workspace that you're not fond of, just simply go to Window, Workspaces, Reset to Save Layout. I like to stay in editing when I'm working, and so usually I typically hit editing, and again, if I reset it to the saved layout, everything snaps back in place. All right, now to navigate to these different windows, you have a few options. You can simply click in them. You can click on the tabs, which we'll talk about here in a second. Or you can hold the Shift key and hit Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3, and Shift 4. So Shift 1, 2, 3, 4 navigates us through these windows and allows you to make sure you're selecting the right window. To be honest with you, clicking does the job the best, but that is the hotkey for those. Now, our project window is going to allow us to start importing media into this project. And the project that we create, and the length that the project we create, is going to be based off of whatever we decide to do in the clips. So one of the first things I do is navigate to my media browser, and I set this up. This is great if you have a external hard drive or jump drive that you're using with the footage on it, and you want to import it to your local media. What I can do right here is I can navigate to Users, my desktop, there it is, and we can go to the demo folder, and I can even go to the B-roll footage. And you'll notice that that gives me easy access to this. But as always, you may not always have all your footage all in one place. So you may be importing left and right, back and forth. If you want to save this to your favorites, you just simply hit Add to Favorites, and now at the top, that desktop folder will always be there. I highly suggest you do this, especially if you use a specific drive to work with your projects on, like a Western Digital or a Seagate, things like that. All right, let's move forward here. So I'm going to go to the project window, and first thing is I'm going to import my media to start. Now we have a lot of options in here. We can create items, again, new items. I can add things. We can create new folders. We can search for videos if we had a lot of items in here. The easiest way to start, though, is to either right-click and say Import, or just simply double-click in the bottom left-hand corner where it says Import New Media. So let's go ahead and let's import our footage. So I went ahead and imported my B-roll, which contains all of my different files. Now this is very important. I went ahead and did them all at once. And what you can see is they have the same frame rate, they have the same media start, and I can even stretch this out. We have tons of information. Our video info, we have the media start and end, so you can see they're roughly 30 seconds apiece. And all of that is going to be very, very important to get started. So once we have those items, now we have to view them. Now, to view them, we may want to view an item but not put it into our scene. So the top left window, which is called the source window, simply is kind of like a preview window. The right window, the program window, is going to actually show you what's in your scene and what you're going to see when you edit it. So I always start in the top left window. So let's start with let's do this epic cloud. So I'm going to simply click and drag. And this currently is not in my timeline. It just allows me to see it. So I'm going to hit the spacebar key to start playing my epic cloud video. At any point, I could hit stop, rewind, and so forth. If I hover over these, you can see it gives me a really nice kind of hotkey as well. So if I hit Shift and I, it goes to the very beginning. We can also add markers, mark ins and outs, which we'll talk about. We can insert the clip into our timeline, overwrite the clip into our timeline, and then just import or export, an individual frame if need be. We have our time frame here. We have all our settings and our playback resolutions. Typically in Premiere, the playback resolution will be half or less. This is basically a way of your computer handling the file size so it can play back so smoothly, unlike other programs maybe like Photoshop or Adobe After Effects, in which you need a lot of RAM to play those back. We can also set our looping controls and some of our display controls in there. Here you can see the half playback as well. So we have a lot of different options here to kind of start. So let's go through, and I'm going to scrub through this video. And I really like After the Clouds Have Passed, so this is really a great starting point. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set an endpoint. Now, our endpoint is mark in, and that's I on our keyboard. And so that will mean that when I use this clip, I only want it to start the clip here. I don't want to start it back here. I want to start it actually on frame or second 20. If I look at that, you can see it goes straight to second 20. And as soon as I hover to that endpoint, you can see the end marker is available. So I'm going to hit spacebar again. And when I find the area that I like, and we're going to play maybe 5 seconds in, maybe a little more, I'm going to hit the O key, and that's our out point. This allows me to kind of figure out ins and outs of the clip. Now, if I hit the end point again, it's simply going to change it. So I hit Command Z to go back. I just want this portion of the clip, and you can see I can move these. I can fine-tune them and whatnot. So that is very, very important. And as you get a lot of footage, this is really helpful to start marking clips. So I can actually take this file and drag it into, or import it, or insert it with the comma key into my timeline. So if I hit my comma key, I can actually get this to come into the timeline below. Now, I don't want to do that. What I want to do is, again, I don't want to add buttons here, but that's your add button feature. What I want to do is I want to make a subclip of this. So I want to have the full clip at my disposal, but I want to kind of bookmark this area for later use. So to do that, to make a subclip, I have a few options. I can right click and say make subclip, or I can hit Command U, U as in unicorn. And then I can call this maybe awesome clouds. There we go. And we're going to restrict the trims to those boundaries. And then what you'll notice here is now I have a new marker, but I have an awesome cloud subclip. So now I'm ready to import this. I could actually drag the media in here and start creating my timeline. So I dragged it here on V1, which stands for Video 1. You'll notice I have a colorful clip here at the top, and that colorful clip begins at our endpoint. You can tell they're pretty much identical frames. This in my program window is what the viewer would see. So this is my live window. And a lot of artists I know who use multiple monitors will have one the project window on one screen and then the live view on the other. And this is a very similar process if you were to use Final Cut Pro or Avid or any of the major editors out there. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go down here and I want to kind of scroll my little bar outwards so I can see my clip. And I'm going to just play through it by hitting the space bar. And everything looks pretty good. Not too bad. So I can just hit stop here and play through. Now I don't really need the clip up here anymore. I'm going to override that in a second with a new clip, but that's a good starting point. So we can see it, we're not really dealing with audio as of yet. You can see now I have a sequence, which is that marker right there, and my sequence happens to be the same as my clips properties, in this case HD, 1080, and so forth. Now at any point, I could create a new sequence on my own, and I could do my settings myself. So I could go in and set, if I knew a specific project needed to be built, I could set those on my own under the new sequence button. I don't need to do that right now. We're going to work basically off of our footage so we can retain uniformity throughout the whole piece. Now, so we have our scrubbing, and if I hit, I have some hotkeys here when I'm playing that we're going to play around with, and I want to kind of scrub through and just kind of check it out. Now we're going to move over to, and we're going to play with those hotkeys with the seagull. So we're going to take the seagull and we're going to drag it up here. We're going to hit our space bar. And now if you play with your J, K keys, your J will move you forward and K will move you back. But those keys are very good. So J and space bar and then holding down J, I can scrub back and forth. I can kind of play through this scene. So I'm going to look at this scene, and I'm going to kind of come to this area. I'm going to mark that as my endpoint, and I'm going to continue to play forward. And I like this scene. So at this point, I could make a subclip, but I can also begin to insert the media into my scene. Now, I can do this in a variety of ways. I can hold the Shift key to kind of end, and you can see it kind of gives me a little red symbol when I'm on the corner. And I could simply insert the media, and by inserting the media, that will just take it and put it into the scene. So that will allow me to kind of pull it in. We do have options for other things like speed and duration. We'll get into that in other lessons and whatnot. We have override, so we can override specific media, which we'll talk about here in a bit, and so forth. So again, when you find your clip and when you find where you want this clip, it's highly suggested that you kind of start playing around with subclips and things like that, because it'll just make it a little easier. And especially that's good for you. Now, we have other options here. So you can see we have all these other V3, V2, and so forth that'll allow us to play. And when we start playing with those, notice without them highlighted, I cannot insert any clip. So what we want to do is we want to tell this footage that this is going to be with video 1. We want to insert or override it. Overriding tends to put the clip, and let me zoom out so you guys can see this. Really zoom out, make this kind of small. There it is. Overriding will put it on top, while inserting tends to take that clip, and you can see here, if I do an insert, it kind of puts it right at the end of it. So really great stuff. Now you can see these clips play back to back. We can drag these, we can kind of move them over, give them a little overlap. We can play with that a little later with some transitions, but it gives us a nice overlapping clip. Now, at any point, you can see here I have another clip, which is a close-up. Let's say I want to put a close-up of this bird within this clip. Now, again, I have more options for my clips. I can, again, play with those. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to do a little more of an advanced move, but just to get you an idea of what Premiere can do, I'm going to use my razor tool, which is C or cut, and I'm going to cut that footage, and by cutting that, I'm going to go back to my selection tool and just move it out a little bit, and what I want to do is I want to insert footage into that black space. So to do this, I can do this a multitude of ways, to be honest with you. But to really do this, I need to make sure that the clip I put in fits that area exactly. And that's going to be very, very important. So what we want to do is, again, we want to play with the seagull clip. Now, I could add up this footage, or I could use some of these other tools, like rolling edit, rate stretch, slip tool, slide tool, etc., to kind of deal with that space. So what I'm going to do is I kind of know I like it from here, so I'm going to set an endpoint, and you know that's a great clip. I'll hit an out point, and then what I'll do is I'll simply do an override footage, and you can see it places it right in the middle. Now that's really nice because now I have a great kind of insert. So I overrid the footage, the hole in the middle, and then I clicked and dragged it to make it the length that I want. And I can still edit this, and you can see it updates live in the piece above. So now if I hit spacebar, we have a great slow-mo, birds from far away, we cut, we could have a voiceover going here, all sorts of stuff, and there you go. And then at any point, as I mentioned, I can start playing with more footage, so I can go and say, let's put the awesome clouds back in there. I can do an insert, and it will insert it in between the 2 points. I can do an override, and it will just overlap those 2 points. So again, pretty nice look. And to do that, again, I have to have my footage loaded. That would be very helpful. And you can see now, here we go. I can override that. So the clouds play, goes back. all sorts of fun stuff. So that's the basic of editing. And again, it's just understanding your videos and your sources and things like that, understanding the organization of everything behind this. And then we can save our file. So we'll do a save. And if we've done everything right and we've set up our file, we should have saved it right here in the video project. And you can see I don't have any additional footage. All those cuts and subclips are saved within my footage here. So that is a simple starting point to Adobe Premiere. And next lesson we'll learn a little bit more about how to play with some of these edits.